Hey, it's Danny from projectmanaverse.com, and in this video you're going to learn 5 techniques to help you form a good relationship with your project members so you can form a high-performing team that will deliver your project on time. First of all, let me say that forming a good relationship with your team members is part of leadership. And if you want to be a really good project manager, you need to evolve your leadership skills. But leadership is not magical. It doesn't take vast amounts of EQ. You don't have to be William Wallace. You can be a standard person and develop leadership skills. And there are certain practical things that you can do every day or every week that will help you act like a leader and actually make you be a leader as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say that about leadership. Now, it's really important that you do this and you form a good relationship with your team, because if you do that, you will help to create this high-performing team. And a high-performing team in a project world is such a powerful weapon to ensuring that your project is going to deliver on time to budget. It's underestimated, but if you're a project manager and you want to do well, you need to make sure you create this high-performing team, because that's probably 60% of the battle, just getting your team to become that high-performing team. Because if you do that, they'll be motivated to work, they'll be proactive and not reactive, they won't procrastinate, they'll go the extra mile for you without asking, and the really key thing is they will want the project to succeed. That is a secret ingredient of a successful project. Number one, you yourself as a project manager really wanting the project to succeed, but also all your team members. If you're all on the same page and you already want the project to go live by the date you said it was going to go live, then you are so much more likely to be a success as a team. So that's what it all comes down to. So let me help you with the steps to create this good relationship with your team. So step number one, or technique number one, is listen and act. So you need to listen to your team members, and if they ask you to do something, or ask you for a favor, or ask you to unblock something, make sure you do it. It's a very simple thing. They rely on you to be a leader and to be there to help them get their things done, to help them achieve their milestones, to help them progress with their activities. So if they ask you to do something, be it trying to get someone's attention, or trying to get someone's time, or trying to get an approval, or just trying to get, I don't know, traction from another team, just make sure you help them, because that's where you can really add value as a project manager, because you'll have a reputation, or you'll have some level of authority as a project manager. And these things that they ask you are really quite simple, so just make sure you jump on it and do it. The worst thing you can do is just to ignore it, because if you start to ignore their requests, especially if they're simple, they will very quickly lose trust in you as a leader and the project manager, and that relationship won't grow and you can't nurture it that way. So make sure you're jumping on those requests, because it's not difficult and it really, really will help you to form that good relationship with your team. Okay, number two is pay attention to how people are doing and how their mood is, because the project world can be pretty brutal. It's all relative, of course, but in the office business world, projects can be very intense and stressful and brutal. There's often high pressure, long hours, and some people can just get overwhelmed, and some people can just can't take the stress, and they end up getting signed off from work, and they're not back in the office for 4 weeks. Number one, you want to make sure you're looking after your team. No one wants to see anyone be signed off from work and have mental problems because of the stress and feel that emotional pressure. But also, from your point of view, you don't want to lose your team members, because if they go, then you've got a hole to fill, and there's not always someone to fill that gap in the project. So you want to make sure you're looking after your team, because it's much better to address the situation then and there. Maybe say, right, we'll just take a half day every day this week and just try and recover a little bit, rather than losing them completely for a month or even 6 months. Who knows what could happen? But I have seen people be signed off for stress in the project world. It's very common, especially if it's a very high profile, very important, fast-paced project. So make sure you're doing that, and you just need to be aware, but also just check in with them one-to-one now and then. Your team members, just have a little bit of time, maybe every 2 weeks, just check in with them, even if it's a 5-minute call saying, hey John, how you doing? Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. Are you under a lot of pressure? Are you managing your tasks all right? Is there anything you want to get off your chest? And just give them that opportunity to let you know if they are suffering with stress and it's too much for them. So that's a powerful one. That's tip number 2. Technique number 3 is have a bit of campfire chat in your team. When things are really high pressure and everything's urgent and it's all very important, it's very easy to get very serious as a project manager and never have a laugh and never relieve the tension and never kind of have a bit of fun. So make sure you're doing that. Don't go crazy, but just have a bit of a chat on some of your meetings. If you've got a daily stand up, have a minute or two of just a bit of, I call it campfire chat, because when even in the olden days when men went to battle and they were facing death every day, even despite all the death of their colleagues, their army friends and their buddies and family members, they'd still at the end of the day get around the campfire and have a good laugh. So you need to allow for that. So if you're in the trenches with your project and it's very stressful, just make sure you've got a little bit of time for campfire chat. And if you're not very good at making jokes or being funny, then just open up a conversation. Just say like, what did people do last night or on the weekend? And that will just open up it will allow people to come in with a bit of a conversational starter, and it'll very quickly, if you allow it, a little bit of banter will naturally take place. So just make sure you're doing that as well. Okay, number 4 technique is lead by example. And what I mean specifically by this is more about your dedication and the effort you're putting in and how on it you are and the hours you're working. You shouldn't be asking your team members to work long hours if you're not going to work long hours. So if your team they're slogging it out and doing 10-12 hour days for a week and you're just logging off at 5 o'clock and going, see you later guys, that's not really leading by example. You should be there with them, even if you can't contribute to what they're doing, if they're developing or fixing defects. But you can't always support that, but you can just be there and do other work, just be there with them working, so they can see you're online and you're sharing the pain, as it were. You don't have to do that all the time. I'm not saying that every time someone works late, you have to work late as well. But in general, if your team in general are putting in the hours, then you should do that as well. Don't just leave it to them and just assume you can log off every day. The only exception to that is when you're working or you're using third parties and you're paying them specifically. Then in that sense, you've got the right to ask them to work late because they want to deliver for you because you're the customer. But if you're in an organization and your colleagues, let's say they're in your team and they're working late, you should try and share that pain and lead by example as well. Okay, the last technique is to be honest. Be honest from the start of the project, and I specifically mean about your knowledge of the area of or the field that your project is in. Let's say it's an IT, well, it will be an IT project, but let's say it's about finance and you don't know much about finance. That's fine, because project managers don't need to know the specifics of the industry they're in. They just need to know enough to be able to manage a project, and that's sometimes better because it avoids you getting too stuck in the weeds and you can really manage the tasks at a high level. So make sure you're just honest with your team from the start and say, this is my level of knowledge about this subject, so you're gonna need to clarify things for me, and just be honest at the start, so that way when they're speaking they know that they need to convey it to you in a slightly different way, a slightly dumbed down, summarized version. And I'll often just make a bit of a joke of it. I say, sorry, I've got a dumb project manager question here. So you guys, do you mean this or this? Just don't be embarrassed about it. Just be honest. But you shouldn't be embarrassed, because what you're bringing to the table is the coordination, the organization and the drive and the pushing forward of the project. That's what you bring to the table as a project manager. You're not there to be an expert in the field. So, but what you don't want to do is try and lie about it, or even lie by omission and just kind of sit there nodding when you don't really understand, because then that makes your life very difficult as a project manager, especially if you don't do it at the start. It's hard to do it 4 weeks down the line. We just say, sorry guys, I actually don't understand what you're talking about, because then you'll look really silly. So you need to do it from the start and just be honest about how much you really know. Okay, if you do those 5 things, that will really help to foster a good relationship with your team, and that will help them to become motivated and high performing, and that will really, really help you to deliver your project on time to budget. If you enjoyed the video, do hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Until the next time, please take care.